Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Travis and welcome back to another video. So today we're down here in the fish room and we're taking a closer look at the DIY fish food. Now we're going to talk about what's in this stuff, some of the ingredients you could substitute that could really dictate the price of this, also some things I like to add that are beneficial for the corals, and then yeah, we'll talk about the pros and cons, give you guys enough information to get started if you so choose to want to make your own fish food, and then we'll swing the camera around and we'll feed the 300. You guys can see the new fish and we'll wrap up the video then. So first things first, let's talk about the most common question that I get about homemade fish food, and I've been doing this for back in the 125, so it's been like 6 or 7 years I've been making my own food, and that is it worth the price? Is it cheaper than going to Petco and buying those cubes of food? Is it worth it? How long does it last in the freezer? Those kind of things. So when it comes to price, yes, you're gonna save a ton of money making your own fish food, period. You just are. When you buy ingredients in bulk, or you do something yourself, or you create something yourself, you're cutting out the middleman, you're cutting out that packaging, you're cutting out the transportation of that item, so you're gonna save money overall. Now, when it comes to, I guess for me, what I save, or what I go through, every 3 months I try to make probably, I'd say 7 or 8 packages of this. It's basically a cup and a half of the food once it's done, flattened out. You gotta see it there, and then I just kind of snap off pieces as we go. Now, it costs me probably $25 to $35 depending on what ingredients I'm going to get, and we'll talk about that here a little bit. But overall, it's a lot cheaper for me based on how much I feed, and you guys will see how much food I actually put in this tank just to keep my nutrients where I want it to be. And it's a lot cheaper for me to make it myself. Plus, I know what's in the food. I don't have to worry about any extra things. I can then say I make this food and I have lower nitrates like I do now. Well, I can make adjustments in my next batch to hopefully increase those nitrates or balance out the food, so we don't have to play with medias or make any adjustments to our tank. We can just feed our tank how much we want to feed, and that can pretty much keep the nutrients where it's at. So that's kind of the goal, besides saving money and make sure I know what's in the fish food. So when it comes to this stuff, it's really easy to make. I use a meat grinder. You guys have seen videos on this. I'm not going to do it here because I'm not really ready to make any at the moment. But I do have other videos I'll try to find. Maybe I think I have a live stream or two. I'll put it in the description. You guys can see the whole process of grinding everything up. But overall, I get ingredients from my local Giant, which is a grocery store here. I like to get shrimp. That's usually my primary meat ingredients. I get the fresh shrimp from the meat department there. It's never been frozen, anything like that. Now you can use frozen shrimp if you want. I personally don't. I just get the fresh stuff, fresh as I can get. And then I like to get octopus. That's usually my next main ingredient. That's in the frozen seafood section. It's in a pack of 2. It's like $6 or $7. It's relatively cheap. And then if I really want to spend some money and I want to add some extra, I'll go out and get scallops, but usually, as you guys know, scallops are really expensive, but you can add them. They're going to definitely be beneficial for the tank. But yeah, so those are usually the 3 main meat ingredients that I like to add to my food. Now, there was squid at one point that I was able to get pretty consistently, but I haven't been able to find it, so I don't know, until I could get that stuff again, I'll probably just keep using what I'm using, and then, you know, hopefully the squid will come in, because I like adding that as well. It really gives like chewy bits for the fish to kind of mess around with, and I know I like it. So that's the meat ingredients. Now when it comes to the plant-based or the phosphate base ingredients, I've been really transitioning over to broccoli, and then I like to add nori. So I buy the nori at Costco, like the big chunks of it, the slabs of it. And, I can probably show you up close here. And you can see it inside here, like these little chunks of nori, all that stuff. So what I do is I like to buy it in bulk at Costco. It's relatively cheap. And then I buy broccoli at the grocery store. I try to get the organic stuff. And regardless, I soak it in hot water, and I try to get all the oils and everything off of it, regardless if it's organic or not. So those are my 2 main ingredients when it comes to phosphates. It's going to be nori, which is really, you know, seaweed. It's based on what they're already eating, especially the tangs. And then the broccoli for the micro nutrients, just because broccoli is packed full of those kind of nutrients, are really good for you, and it's really good. So I like to add that. At one point I was adding collard greens, which the fish really, they ate it, but they didn't seem to be as happy about eating it as the nori and the broccoli mix. So collard greens is always an option, and you can find those in the frozen vegetable section. They're going to be in the little bags there. You can get that stuff that way, or you can get them fresh and on the outside where all the fresh ingredients are there. So that's really it when it comes to ingredients. Now when I add stuff to the tank or to the food, coral wise, as you guys know, I dose refuel. I know that's backwards, but it's fuel. I dose this stuff to the tank already once a week. I do 200 milliliters once a week, just based on my normal consumption and the recommendations on the bottle. So I will add, depending on how big the batch is, I'll probably add maybe a cup or so of this. Not a ton, but again, if I'm making a huge batch of food, I just put a cup of this in there. Nothing too crazy. Again, it's depending on how much I'm making. The next thing that I have been adding is Acro Power. And I don't really know. I mean, this is stuff that I've been using for years. I've been very successful with it. It's good for polyp extension. I mean, people have their opinions on it, but these are the two things that I've been using successfully on this tank. And as you guys know, I've grown this tank out before in a very short period of time using these ingredients or using these methods, and I really like it. So if I add it to my fish food, not only am I dosing this every single week by itself, but if it's in the fish food, it's like daily dosing of this stuff. Now, it's not a ton of it. Again, it's going to be like a half a cup or a cup added to the mixed up ingredients, and then, you know, it's part of the food. So those are the two main things that I add for the coral. But believe it or not, this stuff, based on how it's being ground up in the meat grinder, is so fine, which you guys will see here. You'll really see how it mixes around in the tank, and that itself is also feeding the corals. Like the lobo will blow up and be really fluffy and sucking in all the particles. The mushrooms will close up, and then, you know, the clowns actually take food over to the Goniopora. It's just really cool. And then with all the fine particles, the corals are getting fed as well on top of everything else. You know, these two elements that I'm adding to it. So that's pretty much it when it comes to the ingredients. Again, I'll try to find a video and put it down so you guys can watch me actually make it. But it's very simple. You cut the stuff up into pieces that are able to go through the meat grinder. I run it through twice on the fine setting, make it as fine as I can, mix it up with everything that I got here, and then I put a cup or two in each one of these bags. And these are just the Meat Saver bags. You can get these at Amazon. You get them at Bass Pro. This is stuff I use for my deer meat when I'm processing. And I have a little vacuum sealer. So I put a cup in and I just flatten it out and then put it in the vacuum sealer and then just stack it in the freezer. Once it's frozen, you can pull this stuff out and break it up and put it in a container, making it easier to feed. Super simple, and it virtually takes maybe 20 or 30 minutes to make 3 months worth of food. It's super easy. And one thing that I will say is once it's frozen, don't let it thaw out completely and then refreeze it and do that over and over again. It's just not good for the ingredients, so just keep that in mind when you're making this stuff. So with that, I think I pretty much covered everything. If there's any more questions that you guys have, please put that stuff in the comment section, and I'll go through tonight and tomorrow and try to answer those questions. I'm really trying to get in the comment section and answering your guys' questions, just to, get that information out there. So if you have anything that you want to add or that you've changed for your own personal fish food or any questions about it, feel free to put that in the comment section. I'll take care of you. So with that said, let's go ahead and swing over to the 300. I'll get the lights and put the filter on, and we'll feed the fish. Oh, before I go, let me show you the amount that I'm going to go ahead and feed these guys. So today we're going to feed probably, I fed pretty light yesterday, so this is how much we're going to feed today. It's quite a bit of food, but as I mentioned before, my nitrates are pretty low, or they were low. They're getting up there now. But so we're going to feed this today. This is going to be the chunk that goes in there. I just wanted to show you before, because it's probably going to be dark. You're not going to see it. So with that said, I'll see you guys at the tank. Okay guys, so I'm going to go ahead and activate the feed mode here. Now when I click feed mode A, it's going to turn off the return pump, the skimmer, the UV sterilizer, and I'm pretty sure that's it. Basically, I'm just letting the power heads do their thing. A lot of people like to turn the power heads off during the feed mode process, but I personally like to have it kind of moving around everything and just spreading everything out. So feed mode is on. Let's go ahead and feed the fish. So we have our MP40s, our weight pumps. Those are going to be the primary flow in this tank, and yeah, they're just going to kind of do their own thing. You can see it's a pretty big chunk compared to the size of the fish, and it just kind of floats around there. I used to want to put it in a clip. I used to put, when I had more nori and it was easier to stay in clips, I used to put it in there, but the fish just rip it out and shred it all over the place, so it's easier just to drop it in, and they just kind of do a feeding frenzy. It floats down, and some of the non-aggressive fish, like the filefish and some of the clowns that are in there that aren't very aggressive, they'll pick up the food as it falls towards the bottom of the tank. So I'll let this roll for a little bit, and then we'll move the camera around and get a better angle. Okay, so the food is pretty much gone at this point. The power heads have mixed up all the pieces that the fish didn't get, and now it's getting kind of moved around the tank. The corals are taking advantage of it. The lobo there at the bottom, you probably can see at the bottom left, kind of where the yellow tangs are right now. That thing's starting to get bigger, swelling up to pick up particles of food. And yeah, so this is kind of my process of feeding. The feed mode will keep the power heads going and the return pump off for about I think it's 10-15 minutes. I'll have to double check the programming, but it's between 10 and 15 minutes. And then the power heads will, or sorry, the return pump will kick on, and it will start draining down into the sump. After about 5 more minutes, the skimmer will kick on, and then the UV sterilizer will kick back on, because obviously you don't want that running without flow through it. And then the ATO will kick on about 5 minutes after that. So that's kind of the process when it comes to feeding. It's super simple. The fish are all very fat, very happy. And one thing with feeding, I know it seems like a lot of food, but when you have this amount of fish or tangs in the tank, I find that if you're feeding a lot more, it really cuts down on the aggression. I know Big Blue in there, I guess he's all the way over to the right now. He's the most aggressive fish in this tank, but if he's fat, he's happy. And he doesn't beat up on the yellow tangs. He was for a long time there. He was beating up on the sailfin. Even the fox face, he was really going after. But now that I'm feeding a lot more food, that aggression's just not there anymore. So maybe if you're having issues like that in your tank, consider feeding a little bit more. Now, of course, there is a fine line between overfeeding and having nutrient issues. But in my particular situation, I'm feeding just enough, and I still need to dose some nitrates to compensate for the filtration. Now, one thing I do want to maybe just answer a couple of those questions that I've gotten. When it comes to people, the nutrient control, people were telling me to turn off my skimmer for a few hours or turn off my refugium, and that will help compensate for the excess, with the lower nitrates that I have. The only thing that I don't like about that, and I've tried this before, is that with the calcium reactor and being down here in the basement, if I turn off my refugium or not have it on as long as I want, or I usually have, which is about 16 hours, or I turn my skimmer off for multiple hours, the pH absolutely plummets in the tank. Now, with the lower pH, of course, we're going to have less growth. Now, I try to stay about the 8.1, 8.2. I don't think I've gone to 8.3 with a calcium reactor before my entire life. I also dose calc out of a calc reactor to help compensate for some of that pH, but even with all those methods in place, turning off a skimmer for several hours to compensate for the nitrates is just not something I'm willing to do to sacrifice the pH drop. Because if the pH drops and then it kind of raises a little bit, but not quite to where it is, and then at night it drops significantly, even with the refugium on, because that calcium reactor is just going ham. So with that said, guys, try to get a lot into this video. Hopefully it's not too long. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, let me know. We will do a more in-depth video on this tank, a closer look at the corals and the individual fish, but this gives you a general idea of what's in here. Lots of fish, and they all seem to be pretty happy. So with that said, guys, hopefully you enjoyed the video, and if you start making your own fish food and it's successful, or you have been doing it, let me know. All right, peace.